Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the poker vlog. It is Saturday, November the 11th. It is about 12:30 in the afternoon, which is pretty early for the poker vlog. But I'm feeling like getting in an early session today, and I'm feeling like taking a shot. So we're gonna do an early session and we're gonna shot take. We're gonna move up in stakes. We're going to jump into the 2-3 streets at South Point. It's a $600 max buy-in. I think I'm just going to buy in for $500 though. Just keep it a little lower on the variance ride, if you will. So that's the plan. But first, before we do that, we've got some other things that we need to take care of. As you all know, I am into music and I play guitar and all that fun stuff, and I've got this great acoustic guitar that I bought a few years ago, and it's been having some issues. So here, let me show you. So this is a Gibson J146 or whatever the model is. I don't know, you could probably see it right in there somewhere. Boom. But as you can see, this, it's hard to tell here on the video, but this pick guard is not it's not staying on correctly anymore. It's coming up over here as well too, so I got to take this bad boy in for repairs. I'm gonna have him restring it and set up the neck and lower the action on this as well. So that's number one on the list and then from there, since it's on the way, we're gonna drop off the guitar and we're gonna head over to South Point. So that's the plan. That's what we're up to today. Thank you all for your support. By the way, we're at about 904 subscribers as it stands right now. Please hit that like. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. Appreciate all the support. I think we're going to be at 1,000 subscribers by the end of November. So that is awesome. Really happy to see that. I will see you all at the tables. We've been at the table for about 15, maybe 20 minutes before we pick up our first playable hand, 9-8 of hearts in the small blind. Folds over to the low jack, who decides to call the $3. Now it's back over to me. I'm gonna raise this up. I wanna get involved here, and I think we've got a pretty good hand. Even though we are out of position, the low jack has shown quite a bit of weakness here by just limping in position. So I make it 14 to go. Low jack thinks it over and decides to put in the call. So we are going to go heads up here to a flop, which does give me a straight draw. But unfortunately, we see the wrong red cards. We see 5, 7, 4 with 2 diamonds, 1 heart. But I think this merits a continuation bet, so I fire out for $16. A little bit less than half pot size. Probably could go a little bit larger here. But as played, the low jack decides to put in the $16 call. And we are off to a turn, which does give us the straight, but it also completes the front door flush. So I decide to slow down and check here. Looking back on this, I think I should continue betting to try to charge all of his overcards that have a diamond. He does decide to check back, and we see the worst card in the deck on the river, the ace of diamonds. He shows 10-10 with the 10 of diamonds. And we end up losing this pot to a flush that I think we probably could have avoided had we put in a nice chunky bet on the turn.
Yeah.
On to the next hand, about 20 minutes later, we pick up King 10 offsuit in the big blind. We get about 4 players who decide to put in the $3 call, and it's back over to me in the big blind. And I think the right thing to do here is just to check your option. I think you could raise. We could be ahead of all of these players' holdings because they just limped, but I don't really want to play a big pot out of position here, so I decided to go ahead and check. And we do, in fact, flop top pair with a not-so-great kicker, King 4-5 rainbow. I check my option here, and it ends up checking around, and we see the 7 of diamonds on the turn. I put in a small $10 bet, and we only get called by 1 player in middle position, and everyone else gets out of the way. We see the 8 of hearts on the river. Not the best card, but I think we can still potentially get called by worse. I put in a $15 bet, and the player quickly folds, and we take down a small pot here out of the big blind. Starting to get more comfortable at the table after having played for about maybe 2 hours now. Pick up 9-5 of hearts on the button. We see 1 player who puts in the $3 call in the low jack over to me, and I decide I'm going to raise this up with position. I make it 12 to go. Small blind decides to call, but the big blind gets out of the way, and it's back over to the low jack who decides to call as well. So we're going 3 ways here to a flop, which is beautiful for the 9-5. We see Jack 5-5 rainbow giving us a flopped trips. Small blind checks, low jack checks, and I decide to get tricky and check back because I have this board pretty much crushed. Now the small blind leads on the turn, which is the 8 of hearts for $20. And I decide to just come along here and put in the call. Again, being a little bit tricky here with my trips. We see the Queen of Diamonds on the river. Small blind decides to slow down and check. I think I have a clear value bet here, so I count out a $60 bet, put it out there, and the small blind goes into the tank and is hemming and hawing a bit, but ultimately decides a call is in order, and I show him the trips, and he is not happy and folds his hand, and we take down a nice pot here with our 9-5 suited on the button. Best starting hand in No Limit Texas Hold'em, pocket aces in the big blind. $6 straddle is on the button. The player who straddled had been doing so every single round, and he had been playing very aggressively on the straddle. So folds around to the small blind who puts in a raise to 16. Clear 3-bet is in order. The question is, how much do I want to 3-bet? I think the button straddle is very likely to call, and I think if he calls, the small blind is going to call as well, so I go ahead and make it 60, but unfortunately both players let it go, and we don't see any action here with our pocket rockets. All right, guys, so for this hand, I didn't get footage. I thought I had turned the camera on, but after the hand was over, I realized that it was not recording, so you're just going to have to take my word for it that this hand took place. And it is a good one, so let's go ahead and get into it. I have pocket kings, king of spades, king of hearts in the cutoff. There is 2 players that have limped in the pot. I raise it up to $12. The button decides to fold. The small blind decides to fold. The big blind decides to 3-bet me here, and he makes it 65 to go. Now the big blind is an older gentleman, someone we would commonly refer to or affectionately refer to as an OMC in the poker community, Old Man Coffee. He, which is typical for this player type, had been playing very, very tight up to this point. I'd only seen him get involved in maybe 2 hands prior to this. Both of those hands, he just limped pre-flop, no raising. And nothing crazy happened post-flop. So he's been playing very tight. So when he 3-bets me here, I put him on the tightest of 3-bet ranges. I think his 3-bet range consists of pocket aces and maybe the same hand that we have, pocket kings. I would guess that this player type would only call with pocket queens and pocket jacks. And he would probably only call with ace king and ace king suited as well. Maybe he might find a 3-bet with ace king suited, but I doubt it. I really doubt it. I think his range primarily consists of aces and kings here. So both of the limpers get out of the way, and it's back over to me. And based on my assessment of this player's range, I don't think putting in the 4-bet is a good idea here, because we're only going to get jammed on by pocket aces. And I think this player type is going to have a hard time navigating post-flop. So I think the better play here is just to go ahead and call with our pocket kings and then see how things progress post-flop. And that's what I do. So I go ahead and put in the call, and we go to a flop. And the flop comes down queen of spades, jack of spades, 8 of diamonds. Now, if our opponent does have pocket aces, this is going to be a tricky board to navigate. And he's going to have to deal with some turn cards and some river cards, if we get that far, that are not really going to be great for his exact hand. And I think we have a lot of possibilities here. So we can have pocket queens, we can have pocket jacks, we can have king queen suited, king jack suited, queen jack suited. Those are all hands that I would call in position, a 3-bet in position with. So I think this is better for my range than it is for his range. And he takes his time in making a decision on the flop here, but he eventually decides on a down bet of $40. And I think I can raise here given my range assessment, but I don't want to raise and then have him re-raise and be in a shitty spot there. So I think calling is fine. I think we're in a 3-bet pot. We can control the pot a little bit here if we just call. And that's what I do. I put in the $40 call, and we go to a turn card. And the turn card gives us the miracle king of clubs. So now we have top set on a very dynamic board. And this is one of those turn cards that, again, is not going to be good for the big blind. And he seems to know it, because he decides now to slow down. He decides to check. And now it's on me, and I have to figure out how much I want to bet here. I settle on a size of $125, and this puts the big blind into the tank. He thinks for quite a while, and he eventually pushes his cards forward right up to the betting line, to the point where the dealer and I think that he has folded his hand, and the dealer has to ask him if he folded, and I say it looks like he folded, and he then corrects it and says, no, I'm not folding, I just moved my cards so I could count my chips. And then he pulls his cards back. Now, it seemed a little angly, but I'm not going to go there. I don't know if it was malicious or not, to see if he would get a reaction from me. But he does pull his cards back. They didn't go over the betting line, so they're still live. And then he puts in the call. So the $125 goes in the middle, and we are off to a river, which peels off the 5 of clubs. Now here's where I make a big blunder in this hand. The big blind now leads for the same bet size on this river. He puts in $125, and I snap call him. And that's a big mistake. I need to slow down in these spots and really think about things and go back through the hand. My range evaluation pre-flop, my range evaluation on the flop. If he has pocket aces, if he has a hand like ace king that he did decide to 3-bet, we are ahead of most of that 3-betting range on the river. 5 of clubs doesn't change anything, so I think this is a mandatory raise here on this river. And I think I missed a ton of value by not raising. I think we are going to get called by a lot of worse hands. And I think it's going to be very tough for him to lay down pocket aces here. So make a big blunder there in just calling, and it turns out we were spot on when he turns over ace of hearts, ace of clubs. Yep, the tightest of tightest ranges pre-flop, and we turn over our set of kings, and we take down this pot. So good news is we win a nice pot. Bad news is we didn't get max value, but we are on to the next hand. We pick up king 10 once again, this time on the button. So we are going to be in position. We see it fold around to the low jack, who has been playing pretty aggressively and raising a lot pre-flop. He makes it 16 to go. I think I can just call here on the button and play this hand in position. I think I'm going to be ahead a lot of his range. He's raising pretty wide in the low jack, so I decided to go ahead and put in the call, and this invites the big blind along as well, who puts in the call. So we're going to go three ways here to a flop, which comes down 3 deuce king with 2 diamonds. So I've got top pair with a not so great kicker, and there's a flush draw and a potential straight draw out there. Big blind checks, and now it's on the low jack, who sizes up here and makes it 30 to go. Pretty big sizing for a continuation bet. Seems like he might have a pocket pair, and he doesn't really want to see any additional cards, but we're not going anywhere just yet with our top pair. I put in the call, and then once again, the big blind decides this is a good spot for him to come along as well. So not looking too good here, going 3 ways to a turn, but we see the queen of hearts on the turn. I don't think it's going to change too much. And now the big blind checks, and the low jack decides to slow down and check here as well. I don't know if I should be betting here for protection on this, or if I should be checking, but I do decide to check, which doesn't seem like the best option given the board. We do get a pretty safe river though. The 7 of spades shouldn't change anything. Now the big blind decides to lead out here. He makes it $45 to go. Low jack tanks for a bit, but ultimately he doesn't think $45 is a fair price to call here. But I think we've got a pretty good candidate for a bluff catcher. And I don't really see what the big blind can have here other than a missed draw. So I stick in the call. He says I've got bottom pair, and we are indeed good with our top pair, and we win a nice little pot here.
Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Maybe one more.
Thanks, brother.
Getting a little bit more adventurous here in early position. I raise this up with ace-7 of spades under the gun +1. Get 2 callers in middle position who decide to call the $12, and it's back over to the button, who also decides to put in the call. So we're going to go 4 ways here to a flop. I think our hand plays pretty good multi-way though, so I'm not too concerned when we get this many callers. I think we can navigate some flops and some turns pretty well with this hand. Fortunately, the board's not the best for us. We see queen 7-4 with 1 spade. Not too much going on here. We do have a pair though, so I decide to check. I think we can probably win if we get to showdown, but when we see the 8 of spades on the turn after it checks around, I think I can start firing here. We have pair plus flush. I make it 30 to go, and that gets the job done. Everyone folds. Failing at my poker vlogging duties, I did not capture the pre-flop and flop action on this hand. So let me give you a recap and catch you up before we cut to the live action footage. I've got pocket 4s in the cutoff, and it folds to me. I decide to raise this up. I make it 12 to go. Button comes along and puts in the call. Small blind puts in the call, and the big blind puts in the call. So we are going multi-way to a flop here, which comes down very good for our hand. We see bottom set on ace of spades, 6 of spades, 4 of diamonds. So flush draws and some straight draws are out there. Small blind checks, big blind checks, and I continuation bet here for 30. Button decides to call the 30, and the small blind pretty much instantly jams for his remaining $225-ish. This gets the big blind out of the way, and it's back over to me, and I have a decision to make here now. Do I want to reopen the action and jam, or do I want to just call this $225 all in? The button is got about maybe $600 behind, and I have him covered at the moment, so I want to put him in a tough spot if he's got an ace or if he's got a flush draw or any sort of draw here. I want to put him in a very tough spot, so I decide to reopen the action and jam it all in. The button tanks for about 30 seconds before finally deciding on a fold, and the small blind shows 6-4 of hearts. So we are in good shape, and we just need to hold. Let's go ahead and run this out and see what happens.
I was set. Hold on a second, sir.
We see the 7 of hearts and the king of diamonds peel off, giving us a clean run out, and it looks like we are in good shape, and indeed we are. Didn't see a 6, which would have been very ugly considering that he would have gotten a better full house had a 6 peeled off. So very happy to take down this $583 pot against his flop 2 pair and to get things moving in the right direction in this session. Is noteworthy just because I fall back into my passive tendencies. I've got ace-king offsuit in the small blind, folds over to the cutoff who raises to 11. The button calls 11, and I think I've got a clear 3-bet squeeze here for value. So I settle on a sizing of 40 to go. This is going to get the big blind out of the way, and it's going to put the action back over to the cutoff, who decides to put in the call, and the button gets out of the way. So we are going to end up going heads up to a flop, and the flop is pretty ugly for my hand. At least I thought so at the time. I see a flop of 10, 9, 8 all hearts. Obviously we do not have a heart in our hand, so I decide to slow down here and check. But I think I could be betting here. I'm curious to know what all of your thoughts are on this flop. If you're betting here without a heart and continuing to show aggression, or if you're just giving up here in this spot. We see the 9 of diamonds on the turn, and I continue to check. He checks back again, and we see the 3 of clubs on the river. I don't think I can tell a very good story here anymore, so I decide to check here as well. And we lose to pocket 4s. So I think we could have bet here and got him off that type of a hand. I think he's going to show up with a lot of pocket pairs and maybe some overcards with a heart that we still could have potentially bet off of this hand and won in this spot. But unfortunately, we end up losing this one. Curious to hear your thoughts on whether or not we should be betting here on this flop and continuing to show aggression on the turn, and then maybe giving up on the river.
Well,
the table has changed quite a bit. It seems to be playing a bit tighter. Some of the action players packed up and called it a day, or they got felted and decided to quit. But I've got king 4 of clubs on the button. Seems like a good candidate to raise, especially when it folds around to me. I think we can steal the blinds here pretty often. So I make it 12 to go, and the small blind decides to put in the call. So we're going to go heads up to a flop. Flop comes down 6, deuce, deuce. Shouldn't really connect with the small blind, even though it really shouldn't connect with me either. Not sure if the small blind knows that. So I decide to fire out here. I make it 20 to go, and the $20 is going to get the job done. We take down the pot, and we win a small one here with king 4 suited. Last hand of the session, I decide to get a little fancy, suffering from fancy play syndrome here. I've got ace-10 of spades under the gun +1 position. Effective stacks are about $600 in this hand. I raise it up to 12 and we end up getting 3 callers. So we're going to go multi-way to a flop. Let's see if we can't connect with our ace-10. We do indeed connect when we see 10, 10, 5, giving us trips with the top kicker. I decide to check here, which I think is a blunder. I think I should be continuing to bet multi-way with this strong of a hand. But as played, it checks around and we see the 4 of diamonds completing the flush, of course. I check and it checks around yet again here on the turn. So I don't know. I don't think these players are going to have too strong of a holding here when they continue to check. I don't think anybody's going to have a flush. And I don't think the deuce of clubs on the river changes anything. So I fire out here and we take down this pot when everyone folds. All right, so we just finished up our session at 2-3 no limit Texas Hold'em here at South Point. Ended up getting in the game at 2:50 this afternoon after I ran all my errands and everything, and then I had to wait a little bit for a seat. Not too long, but for a few minutes. So it's 6:38 in the evening right now. We cashed out about 10 minutes ago, so we played for about 3 hours and 30 minutes, a little over 3 hours and 30 minutes. We were in the game for 500. We cashed out for $1,218. That is a win of $718. I'll put the totals up here somewhere. So a very nice win for a short session. And I feel like I played pretty well. I missed a bet in some spots, which I think I mentioned in the voiceover. Definitely should have gone for all of it with the pocket kings hand. Was pretty certain that he had pocket aces, but he also could have had a lower set on that board, pocket queens or pocket jacks, and he most certainly would have called it off with either of those hands. So missed a bet there, but other than that, I felt like I played pretty well, taking more aggressive lines and being more aggressive pre-flop. And yeah, I think that's about it for this episode. If you like the vlog, please do hit that thumbs up button. Please subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned in the intro, I'm at about 904 subscribers. Really trying to push to get to 1,000 by the end of November. Your support means the world to me, so please do hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes. Thank you all so much for all the support and for tuning in to the vlog. I will see you in the next episode. Until then, be well. Peace.